Well, it's a good thing we were doing a little pre-trip inspection. We're getting ready to drive from California out to Utah and back. And so we're just doing a few little pre-trip things. Here it is with the hood up again. Have some more problems with this thing. We were driving it and then parked it, and the very next day it wouldn't start. And I go to start it, and this is what I get. What the heck? It would turn over, there'd be some clanking, and just wouldn't start. I went through my computer, plugged in, my crank is in okay condition, IPR pressure is at a good level, and the problem that I have, FICM, that's at a good voltage. Problem I have is my RPMs. I'm only getting a 60-70 RPM rotation for the crank. So batteries are topped off, they're charged, they're solid, but still getting a 60-70 RPM turnover. So I'm going to go ahead and try and undo the accessory belt and see if my compressor or alternator or pulley idler is locked up. Let's go and check that out now. So with the accessory belt off, all the accessories, the water pump, AC unit, alternator, power steering pump, everything spins okay. Here we are, accessories off. I hand spun everything, spinning okay. Let's try and start it without the accessory belt. Glow plug off. Yeah, I think this is a street starter issue, at least that's what I'm hoping. And trying to start it without this accessory belt attached. I still didn't really get any turnover. It just seems to be getting worse. Now it doesn't even seem to be engaging, because before it would at least try and turn the engine over. Just super slow. So now it doesn't even seem to be engaged in the flywheel. Okay, first step, disconnect the negative battery here. But since this is a diesel and it has two batteries, we're going to disconnect both. Otherwise, we're still going to be connected. You don't want to short out anything when you're disconnecting that main starter lug cable. There we are. Got our batteries disconnected. Now we can start working on the starter removal. Hooked up my computer to plug into the OBD2, figure out what the computer's telling us, and there weren't any error codes. So then I did some monitoring as I was trying to start it. I did the FICM to see what the voltage was. It was 47.5, 48. I looked at the injection pulse, injection pressure. Pressure was up over 4,000. The pressure was good. The crank position, there's two parts, the CMK, I can't remember those exactly, but those were both in check, saying that they were okay and it was syncing properly. So the last thing was the RPM, looking to see what that was. This 6.0 needs about 100 RPMs or more to start, and I was only getting about 60 to 70 RPM, so there certainly was a lag issue in the starter. So then we looked at the accessories, took the serpentine belt off, and made sure that my alternator was spinning, my power steering pump was spinning, my AC condenser, I was hoping that wasn't locked up, but all those were spinning fine, water pump and everything. So put the accessory belt back on. Well, before we put the belt back on, we tried starting it, seeing if it would spin, and at this point it would barely move. So put the belt back on, so obviously it's something in the starter. So went ahead and took the starter out, bench tested it, and the solenoid would work for the plunger, but the motor wouldn't spin on the starter. So there we go, need to replace the starter. Wanted to do the 6.7 starter conversion onto the 6-liter engine, and so we'll need to source a 6.7 starter, and then also the lower bolt, instead of a larger on the 6.0, the lower third bolt is the same as the top three on the 6.7, which means because the hole's larger on the mounting bracket, you need a spacer. So I go ahead and crafted a spacer out of some nuts, just ground them down to a 12 millimeter outside diameter, and then screwed them on 24 millimeters in depth to make that spacer, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But went ahead and got it all put back together, got the new starter in, and everything is working fine. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of the process we went through. Now I've got my jumper cable hooked up to the battery. We're going to jump this starter to see if it works, what the problem is. So you can see the solenoid is working, it's plunging, but the motor's not spinning at all. So this starter is bad, and let's go get a replacement. Here you can see the two starters side by side. We've got the 6-liter over here and the 6.7 over here. You'll notice that they're nearly identical, other than 6.0 has the snout where the 6.7 doesn't. The other thing is this lower bolt right here, and the 6.0 is larger, and this one down here on the bottom is the 13, same as the other ones. So pretty much the same. Slight differences, other than the torque and the higher RPM spinning. So here's how the starter's oriented when you're laying underneath looking up at it to fix it, to replace it. You're going to have a lower bolt on the bottom that's going to come in from the transmission side. And then you're going to have another bolt here coming in from the starter side into the bell housing. And then on the back side, you're going to have one more coming through. Now the back one, that one's the hard one to get to. You can't see it at all. It's just like this from when you're underneath. And so you have to feel up and over to get the head of it. Now, what size bolts are all these? Each 3 of these heads are a 13 millimeter. So a 13 millimeter fits all 3 of them. Now to remove the starter wires, you want to do that first. And of course you want to undo the negative batteries first. But the jumper wire is a 10 millimeter and the main lug is a 15 millimeter. So that's on the 6-liter. For the 6.7 starter, the main lug is a 16 for the wire connector. Now to connect or to disconnect all these, you can easily get your 3/8 socket in on this one, maybe a swivel to get the 1/2 inch. But these back here, those are easy enough to get to. There's enough room between the engine cross member, which is about right here, to get your wrench in here on the 10 and the 15. And then this, you'll probably just need a swivel or use a 3/8 to get into that valley. Same thing over here, easy to get to with 13. Now, the one in the back here is difficult to get to. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take your 13 and you're going to need to put it on at least a 6-inch. Mine's a 7-inch. Well, 7-inch extension. So together, those will allow you to get behind the solenoid, connect it onto that bolt, see here, and then get your socket on back here. Now, if it's any shorter, you're hitting this body as you're trying to turn it, and that just doesn't give you enough room because you also have the frame rail up here, so you only got a couple of degrees. So by extending it back to be about a 7 or 8-inch extension, you're able to get that on here, and then you can get a full rotation and be able to undo that. Now it is blind, so you're going to have to kind of use your hand to guide that on there and then just remove that. When it does come out completely, you're going to need to be careful because it can end up falling into the starter hole. So if that bolt comes out and then falls down, and then you remove the starter, that bolt can fall into the bell housing hole. You got to be very careful about that. So just make sure you're using your hand to hold pressure on it up here and just work it back when you do get it out to pull it out. Just being careful with that. But again, the reverse installation is going to be the same. You're going to just replace this bolt with a smaller M8 by 125. But as you can see, well, on the 6.7 starter, that's going to be a smaller hole. But you're going to need a spacer to take up that gap inside the mounting hole. So I'll show you that. But that's pretty much it. I think the little tips and tricks I can get. First off, disconnect the batteries, disconnect the power to the starter, and then I would recommend taking out that upper back bolt first, and so that way all the weight's not resting on it when you go to remove it. So I would remove the upper bolt first, and then the lower bolt, and then this bolt right here. And these two can be vice versa, but that's going to be my little guide for that. Here is our space for the starter. We've got the top front bolt here. We've got one more bolt in the back, and then this bolt down here. So when we're changing to the 6.7 starter, this bolt on the 6.0 is a larger, and so we need to convert that to a smaller 13 millimeter. It's the M8 by 1.25 by 45 millimeters long flange head, and then a spacer, 12 millimeter outside diameter, and then the thickness is the thickness of this plate, so it's 24 millimeters. So that spacer and bolt will go in there and allow that to make our third connection. So we're going to go ahead and work on getting that starter back up in there, getting the bolts all installed, and make our 6.0 to 6.7 starter swap. This is the shot that you can see of the starter in place. You've got that lower bolt right here with the spacer in this section, and then you've got your other bolt right here on the front just below the solenoid, and your last bolt again all the way back up and around here. So you got your power cables right here, and then you can see you got your engine mount right here, so you don't have a lot of room. That's why you want to get that wrench right in here. But again, disconnect the batteries, disconnect the power cables, disconnect that back upper bolt, and then work on these two front ones. But as far as swapping the 6.7 starter in place of the 6.7, or sorry, the 6.7 starter in place of the 6.0, everything is exactly the same in regards to the setup and fitment, other than this bolt is a 16 for the power cable, and then this bolt needs to be changed to a M8 by 125 by 45 millimeter with a spacer to fit inside of this section. Some people just leave it off and use the two bolts. You do what you want with that. There it is, all installed and working. Well, let's see if a new starter did the trick. No, not even a click. Oh, thank goodness. So there's the 6.7 liter starter in the 6 liter engine. It's swapped, and we are good. Oh, nice and quick. All washed up. This thing is clean and ready to hit the road. Get our way onto Salt Lake. But what I'm happier about, here's misused Sport Track, and the front axle is ready to go back under. Gears are in, covers on, axles are in, bearings, seals, hubs, everything. So got to get that back under the front end, start working on the link mounts so we can get this thing going. Pretty excited about that.